Where do I go? What do I do? These are the first lyrics of Earth 2160's haunting main theme. These bewildered questions could also serve as the game's thesis statement. While the previous game in the Earth series, Earth 2150, may have had its strange and obtuse moments, Earth 2160 is, without hyperbole, the most bizarrely crafted real-time strategy game I've ever played. It features many interesting choices. However, this is not to say the game is without creative merit. For instance, Earth 2160 may be the most uniquely asymmetric real-time strategy game ever made. The game's 4 factions sharply diverge in their use of resources and base building. Earth 2160 also has a few special features carried over from Earth 2150, such as customizable units and persistent research. Most notably of all, a first for the series, Earth 2160 also features a fully voiced story, and oh Lord Almighty does it feature it.
If it's a dream, I don't want to wake up. It looks like Earth. The Earth of my youth.
The term space opera comes to mind. This drama is quite the departure from the more subdued storytelling of Earth 2150, which was driven by emails and news reports. Speaking of departures, let me quickly recap 2150 to set the stage. It's the far future, and after a devastating nuclear conflict, Earth is on course to literally explode. The 3 surviving societies of Earth, the Eurasian Dynasty, the United Civilized States, and the Lunar Corporation all fight tooth and nail for the resources they need to complete their evacuations. Each faction's campaign ends when you complete their required evacuation ships, with the other factions presumably left behind. A twist on this introduced by 2160 is that every faction was apparently able to evacuate. Yeah, they took the Deus Ex Invisible War route, which amusingly renders the core of 2150, the scramble for Earth's remaining resources, largely moot if you stop to think about it. At any rate, they escape the ravages of Earth and settle on Mars and various moons throughout the solar system. If you want a more in-depth look at Earth 2150, be sure to check out my video on it. I don't think I'm out of line in saying Earth 2150 is explicitly a better game than Earth 2160, but given Earth 2160's enhanced narrative content, there's a great deal that can still be said on it, so stay tuned. The game opens on a shot of one of the totally not a blockade runner Eurasian Dynasty evacuation ships, emblazoned with sick flame decals for some reason. Contrary to its original purpose, it is now being used to launch an invasion of Lunar Corporation-controlled Mars. This strange model reuse crops up later in the game with the Lunar Corporation's evacuation ship model being recast as an orbital construction platform of sorts, which doesn't particularly fit either. Anyway, accompanying this flyby is the first glorious quip of our main character, Michael Falkner.
Michael, my boy, are you well?
Oh, General, I have this kind of itch in my left shoulder.
Be serious for once. This is a great day for the dynasty.
Okay, glorious might be overselling it. Perhaps that line hits better in the original Polish. Regardless, welcome to the Michael Falkner Show. I don't mean this merely in terms of the narrative, either. As the lights come up for the first mission, you have a single unit, him. Now, unlike most RTS hero units, the hero units of Earth 2160 have full inventories where you can swap out weapons and armor, and even store medkits and deployable explosives. This kind of system seems more at home in an ARPG than an RTS. Interestingly, this inventory and your research are the only things that carry over between missions. Yes, far from the home base and mission system that made 2150 and its expansions so special, 2160 has a more traditional RTS progression in its 4 campaigns. It's hard not to wonder if the game might have been improved had it maintained 2150's campaign style. But I shouldn't get too far ahead of myself. Eventually, after recovering what remains of your strike force and engaging a few Lunar Corporation patrols, you get to build your first base. As I mentioned earlier, the way each faction builds their bases is quite different. Eurasian Dynasty bases sprawl like Dallas suburbs, with the tubes connecting all the buildings to the colony hub. Most buildings also have multiple exits you can build on as well. Similar to base building, each faction collects resources in a different way. Unlike the previous game, the Eurasian Dynasty may have the most straightforward harvesting now. The harvester unit merely needs to fly to the resources and harvest, with the resources immediately being available for use. These units are the MiG-5-23 Vologda class, evoking the MiG series of planes developed in Russia. After constructing a base, you encounter the first meaningful difficulty of the game, destroying a small Lunar Corporation outpost to your south. Now this might sound fairly basic and expected in the genre, but it's a little more complicated than one might think. Mainly because there's only one vehicle and weapon combination that even tickles enemy base structures. If I was being generous, I'd say this might be a deliberate design choice to force players to experiment to get through the mission, but it still feels a bit much for a first outing. It may have been beneficial to grant the player a few anti-building units to play with up front to help them understand their necessity. This can be figured out pretty quickly if one mouses over the various weapons one can equip in the vehicle editor. The anti-building weapon has a nice clear 10 times damage multiplier against them. By contrast, the other weapons do next to nothing. Most of your ground armies will likely consist of a mix of vehicles armed with anti-building weapons, anti-unit weapons, and a few anti-aircraft units as well. As you approach the enemy base and your army begins taking fire, it immediately becomes clear just how quick the time to kill is in the game. Even momentary exposure to enemy fire is deadly. This encourages you to use your hero units to tank the damage. Unfortunately, this leads to quite a lot of, well...
Bells, my blood!
This line played so goddamn often during my playthrough that it quickly became a running joke for my wife and I. Finally, after clearing the Lunar Corporation base, you are met with the glorious in-game end cutscene. Delightfully produced with a textured wall in the map itself, clearly visible at modern resolutions. I won't fault them for this too much, as Earth 2160 is hardly the only older game that's ever had this problem, but it's still deeply, deeply funny to me. The cutscene also provides quite the perspective on Falkner's priorities.
May I ask you something, sir?
Yes, of course.
Would a request for a short vacation be uncalled for? I recently met this girl from storage and I'd like a...
Major, we are at war.
As the next mission begins, the reality of Earth 2160's focus on Falkner as a point-of-view character begins to set in. He, and by extension you, are sent to a research facility overrun with aliens to rescue a Professor Van Troth. The name of this mission, Who Goes There, is an homage to the short story of the same name. Incidentally, that story was what inspired The Thing. This mission is a baseless affair, but you have a handful of infantry units at your disposal. However, they quickly melt fighting the enemy ground forces, leaving Falkner to solo most of the mission. I should mention, this focus on Falkner also extends to the game's manual. Unlike the Earth 2150 manual, which went into great detail about the factions and their motivations, here you have detailed character bios, complete with supplementary documents such as a police report detailing Falkner's intoxicated destruction of a local bar, which, I have to hand it to them, is unique world building. Elsewhere in Falkner's bio, he is non-diegetically chided with, "His cynical humor isn't quite to everyone's taste," which, having played through the entirety of the game, definitely rings true. The biggest revelation in the manual is that contrary to his brusque exterior, he is a man of principle who refused his superiors' orders to eliminate unarmed civilians who were rebelling against a dynasty. Again, credit where credit is due, this is genuinely good world building, though it may have been better to have this incident in the actual game itself. Anyhow, you traipse around the complex, eventually encountering the wayward professor. He's a real peach.
What's going on here, Professor?
I can't tell you, Major. You don't have the necessary clearance to know about our work here.
You also encounter the second major game knowledge difficulty check, though I'll actually defend this one. There's two parts to it. You have to use deployable mining explosives to blow up the alien defensive structures in your way, and to get close enough, you have to equip anti-chemical armor. The alien structures quite literally vomit chemical damage, requiring the use of the specific armor you presumably picked up earlier in the level. Both of these skill checks once again reinforce the usage of the hero unit inventory system. Swapping armor and weapons on the fly is pretty important in these first two campaigns. There is an automatic swap ability for weapons, though it can lead to Falkner using his flamethrower on everything, including aircraft, for some reason. Which, because it's so short range, isn't exactly optimal. But yeah, if you squint hard enough, you can actually kind of see the RTS hero unit gameplay that would eventually be perfected in StarCraft 2 and its Nova expansion. After getting through the hostiles, Falkner makes his way to a nearby communications outpost to request evacuation, and nuke the base from orbit, as it's the only way to be sure. On that note, I genuinely have to compliment the game's use of animated segments like this, and also all the doodads scattered around the terrain, the various non-interactive things that make the game feel more alive. URF 2150, in my opinion, suffered from a distinct lack of them. But here, our doodad cup runneth over, at least on some missions. The next few campaign maps have you fighting humans again, with the third mission of the campaign taking place on Titan, the largest of Saturn's moons. This is especially funny because one of Falkner's combat barks is
Just like on Titan!
Alluding to earlier events described in the manual, which doesn't really work when you're currently on Titan. I get that it probably would have been an annoying amount of work to suppress this specific bark for this specific mission, but still. You also get to play with the Dynasty's moving turrets, which is a pretty cool RTS concept I hadn't seen done before. Story-wise, this is the mission you're introduced to the Edenites, a group who believe that an Earth-like world is being covered up by the powers that be. Spoiler warning, yes it is. You see direct proof of it at the end of the mission. They are still more than a little bit unhinged, though. The next mission, Relict, with the T, is the first mission the game's AI completely broke in my playthrough. You are charged with setting up defenses around a precursor alien civilization orbital defense cannon and supplying it with metal. But rather than the AI sending attacks in waves, it sends everything in one big blob at the start of the mission, before you have much of anything set up. Thankfully, your initial troops are sufficient to fight off this wave, but it does kind of deflate the rest of the mission to not have any additional attacks at all. The AI doesn't even react as you bombard its bases around the map either, which is a very good thing as the Lunar Corporation towers are armed with electrobolt defensive modules, which thanks to their chain lightning effect are comically powerful, able to shred your entire army in seconds if you get a hair too close. Eventually, you're able to clear out the bases and get a satisfying cutscene of the completed cannon destroying the quote-unquote LC invasion ships, which, once again, are the same model as the evacuation ship from 2150. Given how much trouble it was to construct just one of these in 2150, it feels weird seeing them treated like this only 10 years later. On another note, the precursor alien stuff might seem like it comes from nowhere, but I will say in the game's defense, there was significant mention of alien technology in URF 2150's manual, though the only in-game mention of it was the delightful flying saucers. Something that definitely wasn't mentioned anywhere in 2150 is the warp gate in orbit around the moon here. Seems like something that big would be relatively hard to miss. Its existence is revealed surprisingly casually given its implications, but I guess the game itself has a universal answer for this kind of thing.
Don't think so much or your brain will burst.
The penultimate mission in the Eurasian Dynasty campaign is where the game starts to noticeably fall apart.
I've heard it's bad.
Yeah, you said it, Falkner. It starts out simple enough. You're tasked with investigating a mining colony that's gone silent. Amusingly, there's voiced lines of dialogue that were clearly supposed to have a static effect added, but I guess they never got around to it.
Terrible static. What do you read? Michael!
In the other campaigns, they actually do have the static effects for these kinds of lines, so this is definitely an oversight. This is also the first mission where you fight actually dangerous alien units, or as Falkner calls them,
Those things.
I need a those things counter.
Credit where credit is due, the alien designs are pretty good, featuring a surprising variety of unit models, such as these four-legged walkers, which certainly do not remind me of a famous unit from a different RTS franchise. It fires green phlegm and not blue energy, so it's definitely nothing like that. But in all seriousness, the alien units are pretty well modeled and animated, all things considered. This mission is also where Falkner meets Araya, the Lunar Corporation commander.
I was sent here to propose a 3-day ceasefire to the LC commanding officer.
You must be kidding, Major.
Do I hear a no?
No, of course not. It's just hard to believe.
She's the game's other point of view character. She features prominently in the game's iconography, definitely going after those Gooner dollars.
Okay, you can have a date.
I'll talk about her side of things more when we get to the Lunar Corporation campaign. The final mission of the Eurasian Dynasty campaign is, to put it bluntly, a slap in the face. It's not enough that you're fighting an unending stream of Lunar Corporation and alien units working together against you. The game has the gall to make your unit's weapons cease firing mid-mission due to sabotage from the former commander of the Eurasian Dynasty base you take over. To undo this intergalactic sabotage and get it together, you have to find where he ran off to on the map. The game does not make it clear you have to do this. Annoyingly, no game FAQ or Steam guide cared enough to specify his location to the north of your base. Moreover, the dialogue said here reads more of a bring Falkner back to the base and wait for the sabotage to be over than looking for somebody outside of the base. But no, you have to scour the map looking for him, and once you find him, you have to force attack him repeatedly to subdue him. I'm going to guess the scripting bugged out on that one, which is quite the cherry on top. Despite your unit's weapon systems now being restored, the mission does not get much easier from here. Of note, all the resource patches you have to work with are relatively far from your base, in one of the corridors that the aliens use to attack you. Meaning you often have to pull your harvesters back to avoid losing all of them, as you have to move your military units around constantly to keep up with all the attacks. Adding to this, your alien enemies have essentially unlimited resources, which you decidedly do not. Their units are heavy hitters too, even with anti-chemical armor equipped. Adding insult to injury, both factions have units that quickly mind control yours, turning your own army against you. I'm not proud of this, but just to keep things moving, I used a power that has been long forgotten by modern gaming. Cheat codes. A divisive power, I'm sure, but if you've played the mission, I'm sure you understand. This is, by a wide margin, the hardest mission in the game, bizarrely sitting atop the first campaign. Though, admittedly, I resolved to just play the rest of the game on easy after dealing with this mess, so your mileage may vary. Even cheating resources wasn't quite enough, so I made extensive use of Falkner and the kill code, which destroys whatever unit your cursor last selected. If you're not careful though, you can accidentally kill Falkner this way instantly. My blood, indeed. Finally, after the incredible slog of the last mission of the campaign, Falkner is arrested and sent to Titan, again. However, as you might imagine, this is not the last we will see of our erstwhile quipping hero. Something I glossed over previously is that Falkner might just be the most chauvinistic character in all of strategy gaming.
Invented? It takes brains. I thought the LC was full of women.
Maybe even regular gaming, too. Now, this would be more forgivable if this was part of some kind of arc where he eventually drinks the fabled respecting women juice, but that doesn't really happen in the course of the game. The closest he gets to comeuppance is being told off occasionally.
Thanks, Bernard.
Bernard? Why Bernard?
The American people are tired of women.
This isn't just Falkner, though. Some of the Lunar Corporation dialogue is a bit much.
But this time, I'll stay at the orbital center.
Ah, had enough of sticking out your neck?
No, I just got a new hairdo, and I don't intend to ruin it in a helmet.
The game's manual itself has some interesting gender dynamics at play. Specifically, the hero of a campaign is the most important character in the game. He, by the way, means he or she. He must not be allowed to die, otherwise the current mission will have failed. I get that this was before the singular they was in vogue, but there probably was a better way to do this grammatically. Later on, the manual even goes on to describe Araya as beautiful, which is quite the editorialization. Now I'm wondering if any of the Red Alert games describe Tanya like this. But maybe I'm coming at this from the wrong side of things. Maybe this is deeply satirical. Maybe it's a cultural artifact of a different Polish attitude towards gender. In order to get a better understanding of Polish gender dynamics, I watched the movie Sex Mission, which a surprising number of you commented was an inspiration for the Lunar Corporation. Sex Mission, which is surprisingly not the name of the latest trending game on Steam, is a comedy science fiction movie released in 1984. Two dudes are frozen in a cryogenics experiment and awaken in 2044 in a world of only women. In something of a reverse Lisa the Painful situation, the men of Earth were annihilated by the dropping of many M-bombs. The surviving women now live underground and reproduce by parthenogenesis, like the noble Phasmid. Of all the Battle of the Sexes works I've ever seen, it is definitely the most. It's quite the child of the 80s, with tons of bright lights everywhere. In terms of it influencing the Lunar Corporation's theming, yeah, I could see it, though maybe this connection is clearer in the original Polish version of 2150. Tonally, I'm reminded of Austin Powers of all things. Maybe they could make a new version of Sex Mission aimed at the current generations. They could call it Sex Mission Impossible. Anyway, where were we? Ah yes, the Lunar Corporation campaign. The inciting incident is recovering a Voyager probe that crash-landed on Jupiter's moon, Ganymede. It is here you are introduced to the vaguely Barbarella-ish Araya. In many ways, she is similar to Falkner, a rabble-rouser not afraid to buck the chain of command, and of course having a persistent inventory system. After defeating a few scavengers, she finds the probe has been looted.
What? The probe is gone? Damn it! These raiders weren't here for no reason.
Bless the voice actress's heart, she really tried to make that line work. The creators might have given the English translation another pass there. Shortly after this, you get to build your first LC base. Lunar Corporation bases could not be more different from the Eurasian dynasties. You build their towers one module at a time, stacking them vertically, Towers of Hanoi style. Just like in 2150, Lunar Corporation buildings are dropped from above, and are vulnerable as they make their descent, but that is a small price to pay for being able to build anywhere. In addition to the aforementioned hilariously overpowered battle module you can put on the towers, you can also slap down laser walls armed with various defensive weapons, as well as larger ground defense batteries. The Lunar Corporation's mines have also gotten quite the glow up from the previous game. They can now fly around and collect resources in a wide range around themselves. What they collect is interesting too. Adding to Earth 2160's asymmetry is that each faction needs different resources. The LC, for instance, harvests water and crystals, as opposed to the Eurasian dynasty's water and iron. This doesn't have a huge impact on the single player, but I'm deeply curious how this impacted multiplayer. If anyone's got any interesting multiplayer stories, please let me know in the comments. Anyway, you build up your base, amass a force, and go after the scavengers. They're a fun lot.
Ah, you've lost your mind, you dumb chick. We used to do good business with you broads, but attacking us? There'll be one big payback coming your way.
Save your breath, fatso.
Truly the most intellectual exchange in RTS history. Similar to the previous campaign's opening, you have to build some units armed with anti-building weaponry. The purple artillery shells are quite nice if you're not on the receiving end of them. After claiming the probe, you are treated to another delightful cutscene.
What is NASA?
Araya bucks procedure out of pure curiosity.
You're breaching security protocols again.
To hell with protocols. I want to know what's inside this thing.
One of her fellow commanders does not appreciate this.
Your mission is hereby terminated.
But
Listen, girl, just forget it, will you? Forget you ever saw this device. Otherwise, the Stellar Council will have your ass whipped. To the bone.
To the bone. The next mission has you defending a research outpost from waves of enemy units. Honestly, best mission yet. I've enjoyed tower defense ever since I played it as a StarCraft UMS map back in the day. You also encounter a new kind of Lunar Corporation unit, a Beta Orbiter.
Do you think we could perhaps meet now? I mean, just the two of us, alone somewhere. After all, you did promise,
Sure, once you find a way to take us to one of these planets.
Yeah, here's another thing StarCraft 2 did better. I like how Sebastian here sounds like a discount Eddie Deason.
Yeah, boy!
Sebastian's role in the story is about what you'd expect, doing tech things occasionally to advance the plot. But enough about that. Smash cut to bullseyeing womp rats in Beggar's Canyon. Araya and her hacker friend Lynn are shot down while recreationally flying across Mars. After miraculously jumping to safety, they encounter a dastardly trap.
Lynn, are you alive? Speak to me!
It hurts like hell, so I must be alive.
Coming face to face with the United Civilized States. Remember them? They've been strangely absent from the game up until this point, but there is a reason for that we'll find out later. They've gotten quite a graphical makeover from 2150, though they are still delightfully stompy mechs. True to form, mere minutes after encountering them, they are hacked. But by you this time, so it's actually a welcome surprise. After securing these new forces, the base you were going to rendezvous at to the south is overrun. The local commander tells you to retreat to Octan Base. Guess the Lunar Corporation are big fans of Lego. You also find out who is behind the robot attacks. Liu Han, an Edenite who demands the data that was recovered from the probe, which he claims shows an Earth-like world. Araya does not believe him.
This is nonsense.
I think not.
Liu Han claims that the LC higher-ups are suppressing the existence of this planet, just as the ED leadership did in the previous campaign. Conversation aside, the box is locked, the lights are on, it's robot fighting time. Araya is unfortunately fragile against the onslaught of robots, but you're given more than enough to work with to get through to the base. And once your forces arrive, you're given command. This is rather short-lived though, as you only have to defend for about a minute from additional enemy attackers. Overall, this mission too isn't particularly bad. At least you don't have to hunt for stragglers. The next mission is a particularly plot-heavy one as Araya arrives on the scene of an alien infestation, which Professor Van Troff, who you may remember from the Eurasian Dynasty campaign, may have had more than a little to do with.
I can assure you, madam, that everything here is quite in order. I may also remind you that in accordance with the procedures, this research is classified top secret.
This is less chewing the scenery and more devouring the drywall.
I want to speak with the scientific officer now.
I'm afraid that this is very impossible at this time, yes.
But if I'm being honest, it's exactly what the game needed here.
My research, Madam Araya, has come to an end. I now welcome you in my new form.
Surprisingly, this transformation has only enhanced his willingness to deliver exposition. Regardless of your army size, Araya and Lynn flee to the bunker where they are discovered by Falkner.
So I'm your prisoner, is that it?
The fate of soldiers. But no, you're not. Maybe in other circumstances.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
This is the point where the ED and LC campaigns intersect. However, it doesn't exactly fit with the ED campaign because you're still needing to clear the map of enemies, which in their timeline they already did. Also, your forces and base are apparently just fine? Maybe that one's just a bug, but it's hard to say with Earth 2160. After their fated meeting, trace amounts of exposure to Falkner causes Araya to break out in bad puns.
Where is Von Troff? I must speak to him.
No can do. The professor is somewhat alienated and not in the mood for chatting.
As is traditional in these sorts of situations, the top LC brass want to preserve the aliens, but Araya is having none of it. The mission rapidly wears out its welcome though, as you find yourself having to face-check a whole city of alien defensive structures. I also had my base randomly explode mid-mission? Perhaps this was supposed to happen before Falkner showed up? Anyway, after clearing out the last nest, your commander, miffed that you removed the alien threat, attempts to girl-boss gatekeep gaslight Araya.
Please calm down. You're terribly upset. You need rest. You're suffering from exhaustion.
Unit ready.
Battlefield syndrome. Araya, dear, you've had way too much stress.
Extremely unsuccessfully.
Are you telling me I'm out of it, you old toad? You don't like it when someone scrambles your precious little plans, huh? What did you expect to get from the
Unit
aliens?
is ready.
A cure for varicose veins, a new facelift maybe? Or were you hoping for total control over us?
Following this, Araya, Lynn, and Sebastian all flee the Lunar Corporation. I guess the army Araya commanded didn't have her back at all? Not very nice of them if you ask me. The mission starts with the three of them piled into Sebastian's unique vehicle, adorned with a Roswell decal and lovingly described as a UFO. The three of them are here to break into the LC's main Martian spaceport and steal a shuttle. As you might expect from this setup, this is a baseless mission. The UFO from the cutscene is actually a unit you get to use here too. While it's a far cry from 2150's UFO, it has a powerful EMP that disables enemy units and base defenses. After the first part of the mission, you come across a detained group of Edenites and decide to join forces.
Who are you and what are you doing here?
We are Edenites. We tried to reach the spaceport, but we were stopped on the way.
These infantry units may not seem like much at first blush, but their purpose becomes clearer when you discover abandoned LC units at a depot in the south that they can pilot. Here you are also introduced to one of my favorite units in the game. 3 words: Flying Siege Tank. The Cryon absolutely annihilates enemy structures, with a sizable amount of splash damage done to anything in the area. It has to land to set up though, which can be annoying as it's very picky as to what surfaces are landable. Finally, after rampaging through your former comrades in what is not entirely unlike the white phosphorus scene in Spec Ops: The Line if you stop and think about it, you successfully steal a shuttle and make it to orbit, where you encounter an
orbital center. Its computer logs contain records of recent maintenance work, and it's unmanned.
Again, clearly this is the reused model of the evacuation ship. I know this is deck chairs on the Titanic for all the game's other problems, but it still annoys me to no end they didn't make a new model that would fit better here. One would also expect the ship would require more than just 3 trained people and a handful of Edenite cultists to crew, but they make it work.
We'd like to discuss our further plans.
You have plans?
They do make a fair case.
Our lives are worth nothing. Look around you. Uninhabitable planets and moons, corporations forcing us into servitude, and on top of it all, endless war. Humanity has no future. I don't want to live like this, and I certainly don't want my children to grow up in a place like this.
Well, neither do I. But can you change that?
Liu Han can.
Araya agrees with him to launch a rescue mission to save his leader.
Your way is as good as any other. Let's set Liu Han free.
Upon reaching the prison on Titania, you start the mission able to build a base again. It doesn't really make sense that you're able to recruit all these units based on just the few Edenites who escaped with you, but I guess I should just be happy I'm able to build the towers again. As you start to set up your base, you receive a very interesting communication.
Welcome to Dr. Kruger's clinic. Need acne cream? A potency boost? Boil removal? Alien antenna extracted from your brain? Or maybe you just need that special someone to be amputated.
Yeah, so this is something else new to the series. In many missions, you have various hireable hero units offering you their services. These heroes have a surprising range of abilities, with global buffs like increasing your mining output, or just being useful in direct combat. If I had to guess, I would imagine these hero units were a major focus in multiplayer. At least, that's the only rational way I can explain why so much of the manual is profiles for each and every hero, as if this was F-Zero or something. The profiles are an interesting kind of world building, but again, this feels so far away from the civilization-scale conflict that was fought just 10 years ago in 2150. Seems kinda surprising most of these people would even get tickets to flee Earth to begin with. Anyway, this mission, believe it or not, is kind of a grind. You're fighting against multiple dynasty bases churning out heavily armored units, which, in turn, vomit green toxin that melts your units in seconds. However, you can turn this to your advantage by equipping units with psionic weapons that occasionally outright mind control your enemies. An hour or so later, and I should specify, a lot of missions in this game take over an hour to beat, and Lord Almighty do you feel it, you tear down the last enemy base and free Liu Han. Soon thereafter, you are made to endure a cutscene with comedically slow pacing. To keep things moving, I'll reduce it to the essential points. They want to get to the alien gate. Falkner previously fortified the gate. Sebastian has the key to open the gate. To get past the gate defenses, they need United Civilized States construction drones. They can get the drones on the black market. The smugglers who sell the drones have a base on a comet. Honestly, that's pretty metal. Falkner is tasked with negotiating with these smugglers. And so you begin the next mission. Again, gotta admit, I can't recall any other RTS games with a mission that takes place on a comet. I should say though, you're not actually here to buy the UCS drones, because as Liu Han puts it,
since we have no money, we'll have to convince them to hand over the equipment for free.
So yeah, you're explicitly here to rob the smugglers. Amusing that this is the first place their minds go to when they are sitting on an entire ship of Lunar Corporation equipment that they could trade. Regardless, Falkner mobilizes and assumes a negotiating position. The terrified smugglers quickly make a deal with Falkner.
What do you want from us?
Take a wild guess, genius. We're here about the droids.
The smugglers then spill the beans that they found the UCS evacuation ship, the Phoenix, which everyone had assumed was permanently lost. As you might imagine, this is where we switch over to the UCS campaign. The campaign begins with a rather sloppy plot point. The Phoenix demands a password to gain entry, which our heroes do not have. Previously, it was established that the smugglers had this password as they needed it to rob the ship. I guess Falkner didn't think to ask? Actually, that kind of scans. Maybe this isn't a plot hole after all. Either way, after 2 whole days of scanning, they find out that the Phoenix is shielded by a force field projected from a nearby moon, just like in famous science fiction blockbuster movie. As you can probably guess, that's where you're headed next. The lights come up on the mission map, and you start with quite the army, including a few special units that Falkner takes notice of.
It's good you sent me the hacker chicks. Maybe I can catch something on the way. Falkner out.
These hackers make the mission a lot more fun than the usual march to the end of the map, with them quite effectively wololoing the robotic UCS forces defending the shield generator. Impressively shiny and chrome as your forces may be, a few of them are annoyingly armed with the loudest chain guns ever put into a real-time strategy game. Incidentally, for units like this that use conventional ammo, the UCS has reloader units that can supply armies with ammunition in the field. It's an interesting choice, though I don't think it has quite the same weight as having to keep your supply corridor airspace clean in 2150. Anyway, you eventually destroy the totally not an Endor shield generator. Afterwards, you return to the Phoenix and meet the lone United Civilized States voice in the entire game, the ship's computer. Though voice might be overstating it as you never actually hear it speak. Surprisingly, it doesn't seem to mind that you just attacked its forces.
He told us about their escape from Earth, with thousands of settlers on board in the hopeless attempt to find a new home. Since the solar system was occupied by warring factions, the captain had decided not to reanimate the colonists and to wait for the war to end.
Okay, pause. First thing, just thousands? Really? The Phoenix has a capacity not dissimilar from a modern cruise liner? That, really puts things into context. Kinda makes 2150 seem rather pointless if that's all they managed to save. Next question, ship-based faster-than-light travel is not a thing in this universe. Where the hell did they think they were going to find a new Earth? On top of that, the ship's AI wanted to keep everyone in stasis until the ED and the LC stopped fighting, which doesn't seem like a particularly great bet either. Also, apparently the Phoenix was stuck in the orbit of Oberon, one of Uranus's moons. Kind of a weird coincidence to encounter another Oberon-trapped UFO so soon after my Odin video. At any rate, the ultimate frisbee emerges from hiding and quickly becomes a symbol of hope for Edenites everywhere, longing for a new home. The next cutscene is almost entirely a rehash of information we already knew. But they do tack on an interesting new element to the plan, hiding the construction drones and Falkner himself in meteor fragments to slip past the orbital defense cannons.
The cannons scare away ships, but they don't stop meteoroids. I was often hit by cosmic debris. We'll just hide our capsules in a meteor shower.
Again, credit where credit is due, this whole setup isn't the worst plot beat, they just didn't need to explain it this much. And so you gloriously crash into the frozen tundra near the cannons. After running from a few Dynasty patrols sent to investigate the meteorites, you find a good place to start constructing your first United Civilized States base. UCS base building is something of a hybrid of the ED and LC approaches. You use construction drones to place the hub buildings, and then build upgrade structures that adjoin them. There are multiple kinds of hubs. Power hubs, refinery hubs, engineering hubs, and even defensive structure hubs, each having multiple different kinds of potential upgrades. It's straightforward, and it's quick. I like it. The UCS also has arguably the fastest resource collection in the game, too. UCS mining unit, the Termite, mines so much faster than the other faction's miners that despite having to drop off at the refinery, you will accumulate a frankly absurd amount of resources rather quickly. You can also easily expand your refinery to have additional landing pads, with each coming with a Termite. I'm not exaggerating, it's kind of ridiculous how fast this collection is. Instead of merely floating these minerals, you can also rapidly boost your overall production capacity per factory through research as well. I'd be curious how competitive the UCS was in multiplayer, because at face value this combination seems incredibly strong on a macro level. Anyhow, despite being limited to the rather fragile basic walker unit, you lay waste to the ED facilities, grenades aplenty arcing across the sky. The planetary defenses now removed, they fly the Phoenix in and dial the gate. I enjoy how they seem to have meshed FTL aesthetics from Stargate SG-1 and Contact here. Unfortunately for them, they hit what, I kid you not, is essentially a warp bubble from EVE Online.
We've been stopped by a station generating a field that disrupts the subspace tunnel.
Despite not actually showing the gate they allegedly exited out of in the cutscene, we are told that we need to go to various planets in the system to get said gate powered up, cut the subspace disruption field, and get the key to open it. But that's not all. There are people here.
Sounds like an SOS. I haven't made contact yet. I wonder who they are and how they got here.
There's a good chance of them being the lost ED expeditions, sent earlier through the gate. No one is to contact them. From now on, we silence the radio.
This is a dumb idea, so of course it's immediately ignored if you pick the Lost Souls mission first from the list. As the name implies, these people survived the events of the Lost Souls expansion from Earth 2150.
We are fugitives from Earth. We are people left behind on a doomed planet by your corporations.
It's strange they refer to the UCS, ED, and LC as corporations, but I'm gonna chalk this up to translation weirdness. Nobody but the LC was established as a corporation in 2150, and honestly, it barely made sense for them to begin with. Surprisingly, they are not alone. ED expeditionary forces crashed into the planet and have been oppressing them, holding a sizable number of their people prisoner. Falkner tries to convince the leader of the ED forces to lay down their arms, but well...
Do you take me for a complete idiot? I don't know who you are, but I control who lives and dies here.
A war crime later, and you are now morally obligated to take the wacko out. Thankfully, you now get access to Jaguar mechs, which make fine core combatants. Something nice about this mission is that the whacked out enemy commander is an actual infantry unit on the map. Eliminating him completes the main objective, or as Falkner so eruditely puts it,
killing the madman ended the conflict.
Closing out the mission, you get a brief cutscene where you get the aforementioned key to open the gate.
The ancient race that built the gates.
Ah, the good old aliens, huh? Well, enjoy your find, son. If we hadn't helped those settlers, we'd never have found that temple.
We should be happy. Our coordinates are inscribed here. Now we know how to program the gate and reach Eden.
The next mission, silencing the warp bubble generator, starts with Araya getting bad vibes.
One more thing. I have a bad feeling about this planet.
But Falkner is having none of it.
Or what? The boogeyman will come and eat me? Ha! Don't worry, I'm always cautious.
It's worth pointing out how many missions Araya has been stuck on the ship for so far. The second sex, indeed. On one hand, I get that it might be overpowered to have both the hero units out at once, but they could have at least traded off a little bit more. Anyhow, this mission marks a sizable change in the game. Up until this point, the alien faction has consisted of fleshy Zen rejects, but it turns out they have hyper-advanced spacecraft as well. This is an appealing duality, their forces being both Zerg and Protoss in effect. These ships are kind of ridiculous. Not only do they do tremendous anti-unit damage, the most common one has point defenses that shoot down your anti-aircraft rockets. Funnily enough, the venerable Homeworld 2 Point Defense Systems mod dropped a whole year before Earth 2160 came out, so there's a non-zero chance that may have helped inspire this. Oh, and it goes without saying these things have a significant passive health regen to boot. Eventually though, with enough sustained fire, they crumble. With the ship that was guarding it now removed, it's trivial to destroy the jamming array. End mission. Didn't even have a line of dialogue to cap it off. Pretty short map overall, but given the general pacing of the campaign, I am crying tears of joy to get through anything in less than an hour. Having completed the other 2 selectable missions of the trio, the third mission of the set, Hidden Star, is immediately loaded. You're dropped onto a strange land of platforms surrounded by void and lightning. Visually, this mission isn't unlike the final map of the Emperor's Testament expansion to Perimeter, if you're unfortunate enough to have made it all the way to that mission. Genuinely not possible to beat that one without cheesing it, at least the version in the game's original release. Blissfully, the situation is far less dire here. Your first objective is to reach a nearby Eurasian Dynasty base, eliminating alien resistance on the way. Falkner once again attempts to bluff the commanding officer, and once again, it does not work.
The password, right. Dynasty forever.
Treason! You are not a GRU officer!
These Dynasty commanders have no chill whatsoever. Even without the password, you would think they'd at least have the sense to accept any help they can get. At least they politely wait until your conversation with Araya is over before setting your standings to red. If you know where to shoot, you can burn down the base with your starting army just fine. But there's more. This starts the next objective, locating an energy transmitter to power the gate. After scouring the map, you locate said transmitter. Liu Han sends Sebastian, despite the protests of Falkner.
No offense, but Sebastian is a civilian. That will only make my job more difficult.
From here, it's rather unclear what you're supposed to do next. It sounds like you're being asked to hunt and destroy all of the aliens on the map. The objective even says destroy the aliens. But in reality, what you need to do here is defend the transmitter for a time from waves of enemies, and then finally eliminate the stragglers. So it's kind of both, really? The attacks against the transmitter don't mess around either, so it's good to set up some heavy static defenses there. I should also highlight that in this mission, the game commits the cardinal RTS sin of spawning enemy units outside of unassuming doodads, instead of having them come from a standard enemy base or other clearly telegraphed place in the mission. Fortunately, this is the only time I remember this happening in the game, but it certainly threw me off. Anyhow, with the aliens defeated, Falkner reports back to Araya.
Mission accomplished, people. The transmitter works, Sebastian is in one piece, and the aliens pose no threat.
That's Eurasian blood for you. None of us would have been able to do this. My respect.
Okay, first of all, kind of weird to bring bloodlines into it. Secondly, really, Araya? Really? This is all wildly infantilizing, as if the game wasn't marginalizing her enough already as a co-lead. Finally, the Trials 3 now passed, they travel to Eden. The game even correctly shows exiting at a gate this time. The heroes are loving it.
I'm dreaming. Michael, tell me you're seeing what I'm seeing.
If it's a dream, I don't want to wake up. It looks like Earth. The Earth of my youth.
Given the violent backstory of Earth 2150, it doesn't make a ton of sense Falkner would be that nostalgic for it. But who knows, some people are weirdly nostalgic for the early 2000s, so anything's possible, I guess. Against all odds, the Lunar Corporation are already on Eden, enraging Araya.
Oh no. I will not let them take over Eden, not after all we've been through. Give me a few robots, I'm going over there.
She beams down to the planet with an army of mechs. Upon reaching the Lunar Corporation outpost, Araya finds it abandoned, except for this one guy, voiced by the same person who I'm pretty sure voiced all of the unnamed side characters.
A man ruling over women, and no one has ever found out the truth.
This is 1000% a sex mission reference, as, spoiler warning, the leader of that all-woman society is revealed to be a man, baby. It's not entirely clear what this guy's position was in the LC, nor what his endgame was, as he seems to just be here stranded and alone. He apparently caused the local alien outbreak, so Araya leaves him to his fate.
Don't leave me here, they'll tear me to shreds!
You know, I'm not sure if you're not worse than them.
I dare you to diagram that sentence. Despite Araya's tough talk, it's actually a pretty good idea to make your defense at his base, as it has some defensive structures that can act as a force multiplier for your units. After defending, you build up an army and crush the local alien forces. It's a short mission overall. Afterwards, despite the implication being that the alien infestation is widespread on the planet, the voiceless, faceless colonists from the Phoenix begin landing, completing their journey to Eden. Again, there are no actual United Civilized States characters representing the faction in the entire game, which is just downright un-American. But this all, surprisingly, isn't the end of the campaign. There's one final mission, eliminating a major concentration of aliens on the planet. I like their 3D map topography here, nice touch. Once the mission begins, as ever, they restate the information established minutes ago by the previous cutscene.
This is the last nest of theirs that we know of. We have to destroy them. Otherwise they'll respawn and spread across the entire galaxy.
As to the mission itself, well, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This mission is ass. All the way down to the map design. Tiny canyon bottlenecks everywhere, making moving large armies a chore. Your old friend Van Troff shows up too. If you didn't remember him, I don't blame you. The game certainly didn't remember him either, as he's been absent for quite some time.
There are maggots, there must be carrion.
I'm not the only one here, as you see. These brave soldiers have come to understand who is the future ruler of the universe.
Discount-infested Duran over here even brought some mind-controlled human minions, which are trivially dispatched but spooky, I guess? Soon after progressing some through the map, he contacts you again.
You have passed this first trial.
What the hell are you talking about, you nut?
So yeah, Van Troff is sending Falkner unwanted LinkedIn messages, but he isn't interested.
You wish, freak.
Van Troff taunts Falkner into fighting the bulk of his forces to the southeast. Falkner, as you might expect, charges into the fight, ignoring that it's an obvious trap. This final push into alien territory is a real low point for the game, as your units get stuck in conga lines as you try to get them in range to fight the hovering spacecraft, all while enduring the endless fire of the alien defensive structures. After eliminating this last pocket of aliens, Van Troff springs to trap.
I don't see anything. Van Troff, where are you? Stand and fight like a man, or a freak.
After sufficiently hamming it up, enemy ships converge on Falkner. Falkner has literally been abducted by aliens. So the alien campaign begins with Falkner being strogified. That is to say, made into a mind-controlled alien hybrid monster man. Yeah, that's right, it wasn't enough for him to just be Earth 2160's Jim Raynor. He's also somehow Earth 2160's Kerrigan.
Arise! Go forth and smite thine foes. Become their nightmare.
Surprisingly, it appears Van Troff couldn't implant the knowledge of how to manage the alien army, so he just calmly talks you through it.
From the battlefield, you already know the capabilities of my children. Now you must learn the logistics of your new army.
Which, sure, that's fine and good for tutorializing the player, but in-universe, it's pretty funny. Especially as Falkner has been reduced to an unfeeling drone, now with flatter line delivery than I ever thought possible.
I am awaiting orders.
I will say, Van Troff's core advice for playing the faction is pretty solid.
To create a powerful legion, you need only 3 elements. A Mantian lady, water, and a little time.
He's not joking. Prepare yourselves as the aliens diverge massively from the other factions. Perhaps the biggest divergence of its kind I've ever seen in an RTS. It's as if the aliens are playing an entirely different game. You see, the aliens have no factory buildings. Instead, their units consume water until they become sated and either clone themselves or evolve into a new form. Additionally, the aliens have no tech tree at all, nor even the Earth series staple of designing units. This is it. You generally want to clone a good number of each of the 3 types of non-combat ground units, the Mansion, Lady, Princess, and Queen, to grow the rest of your army from. The cloning process animation not being entirely dissimilar from blanket forts I recall making as a kid. The Mansion Lady also evolves into those obnoxious alien base defense structures you've been fighting all game. Now, you might be wondering what the limitations are on this system. For example, what's stopping somebody from repeatedly going through the cloning process and exponentially growing an army? Turns out, not much. I may be missing something, but I don't think the aliens even have a population capacity mechanic. Yeah, imagine playing Zerg without needing overlords. The big limiting factor here is time. It takes a relatively agonizing amount of it to go through all the steps to clone and evolve a sufficient fighting force. This, unfortunately, is where the campaign grinds to a halt in what should have been its triumph. Now, I entirely get why you would want time to be an important factor in balancing the factions for multiplayer, which I'm definitely not about to downplay how difficult achieving any meaningful kind of balance there must have been. But it really sucks how long it takes to clone an army in the campaign, especially as armies aren't persistent anymore. It might have been good to either start the player with more units to clone with, or flat out have the evolution times in the campaign just to keep things moving. Adding to this, the alien units are slow. It wasn't as noticeable when you were fighting them, but now that you actually have to control them, it's downright glacial. Don't get me wrong, they still hit like a truck for the most part, but the already ailing pacing of the gameplay is utterly annihilated here. There is a solution to this though, and once again, it's a fascinating Earth 2160 exclusive, as far as I know. Now, in most real-time strategy games, you have the option of slowing down or increasing the overall speed of the game. Indeed, Earth 2150 itself had this. But 2160? 2160 doesn't have game speed controls. It has a fast forward button. When pressed, it skips the game world ahead a whole minute. Now, this is a double-edged sword, obviously. You don't want to do it while you're out of formation or in combat, but lord does it help the pacing of the single-player campaigns. Oh, and it goes without saying, the button has no cooldown. The existence of this functionality also implies the possibility of absolutely psychotic Earth 2160 speedruns, skipping across the actual game like a stone. I say theoretical because from what I can tell, there's not a single solitary speedrun of it yet. I implore you, the precious few RTS speedrunners out there, make this your new ironic speed game. I promise it will be hilarious. Anyway, where were we? Ah yes, Falkner's new role. In addition to his alien makeover, Falkner himself has a new weapon, a laser blast. Not too dissimilar from the laser blast from the movie Laser Blast. I'm pretty sure it's the most powerful hero unit attack in the game by a wide margin. Using him and your ground forces, you make quick work of your first outing. Van Troff is pleased.
Do you see how simple it all is? My army is undefeated. You should be grateful to be at my side in this hour of triumph.
Understood. Requesting further orders.
The next mission has you return to that weird planet with the energy transmitter. More importantly though, you now have access to the alien fleet. Much like the ground units, the air units are cloned and evolved, only from metal and crystal instead of water. It all starts with the unarmed floating Replicatoris. Replicatoris is a fun word to say. Impressively, they even conjugate it correctly.
Now that there are 2 Replicatori, at least one of them must be sated with silicon again.
Good old second declension. Once it has its fill of crystals, you can clone it or evolve it into a Morphorotaurus, another unarmed unit. Finally, after the Morphorotaurus consumes enough metal, you can evolve it into a light cruiser or 4 fighters. You can evolve the light cruiser into the endgame stuff with sufficient crystal, but as you may recall, it's already a tremendously powerful unit all on its own. As you might imagine, it takes a somewhat absurd amount of time to get a victory fleet together, but it's the same kind of joy you may recall from making carrier swarms in StarCraft back in the day. After eliminating the enemy base, Van Troff once again compliments you. Kind of.
Congratulations. I suspected that you would be a good investment. I am now convinced that you can cope with any task.
I swear to serve you loyally.
As the second mission draws to a close, the reality of the final campaign becomes quite clear. The maps, mostly being rehashes of previous missions, does not help the pacing at all. I can see why I couldn't finish this as a kid. The next level is something of a departure though, a mission where you have to defend yourself against waves of enemies. You have an infinite resource body of water to play with too. No air units to work with though. This is a good mission to point out that the static defensive structures do not require any resources after morphing the basic nest. From there, you can evolve at a cost of only time 2 levels of either greater ground defense or air defense. Both are quite potent. This is also the mission where it hit me that it's a little weird the main helper voice is the same for all 4 campaigns.
Unit ready.
The cheery, upbeat notifications come off a bit out of place. Annoyingly, they didn't program in a timer notifying you of how long you have to defend before your reinforcements show up, but after every other minor annoyance in the game thus far, this is admittedly a very minor issue. However, Earth 2150 did not have this problem, so it's still kind of silly they went backwards. Regardless, 15 minutes of defending later, your reinforcements arrive. Rather than ending the mission here, you actually get to use this massive fleet to roll the enemy. It comes complete with a whole wing of Death Gliders. Excuse me, I mean post-morph fighters. After cleaning the map, you get to pick which mission you want to play next. Honestly, as there's no meta progression, since there's no tech or items, it really doesn't matter what you pick first in these choices. I suppose it's there for parity with the other campaigns, but it isn't exactly peak player agency. Especially as the mission descriptions are perhaps the least forthcoming out of any of the campaign mission selection options so far. Of these 3 missions, the one most worth talking about is X-345, which I'm pretty sure is the name of one of Elon's kids. The mission description alludes to some kind of mystery being revealed. While I'm not sure the plot quite rises to that level, something does actually happen. The mission gets off to a rocky start when the spoken dialogue doesn't match up with the subtitles.
You have been sent to this planet because I have heard that the UCS assembly meets here.
This doesn't happen often, but it does go to show how many easy-to-fix things were left on the table. They could have patched this. Anyway, your objective here is twofold: to disrupt talks of an alliance between the human factions, and to capture Araya. Fortunately for Araya, you don't capture her, though she attempts to capture an Oscar.
Tyrannos has brainwashed you and you don't know what you're doing. Start thinking for yourself.
I have orders.
Tell me you remember how we fought side by side against Van Troff. Michael.
This briefly causes Falkner to fight his mind control. But alas, this does not last, and Van Troff, now sometimes calling himself Tyrannos apparently, reasserts control. The rest of the mission is a pretty straightforward smashing of the bases. One of the other missions in the set of 3, Mars, while not really being worth discussing fully, is where Falkner and Tyrannos' working relationship becomes increasingly strained.
My praise, it seems, was over-hasty. You cannot even land in a designated location.
I received those coordinates from the Central Command.
Do not attempt to redeem your incompetence with errors alleged to have been perpetrated by my wonderful, flawless creatures.
Falkner points out that he has no support, so Tyrannos rudely sends some.
Do I have to take care of everything myself? Can't you deal with such a trivial matter?
A rather poor management style, really. He should be building Falkner up, not tearing him down. You might also remember this map as the miserable final mission of the ED campaign. At least all this recycling is eco-friendly, I suppose. The abuse of Falkner does not stop when you reach your destination.
I have reached the crater, awaiting further orders.
Falkner, are you stupid? Or are you trying to bluff me? You are to purge the area of enemies. Now, does that not appear obvious, even to you?
Understood.
Another faux pas like this, and we will part forever.
Kind of funny to think of an alien hybrid overlord guy using the words faux pas, but I guess there's enough humanity left in him for it to scan. After clearing all 3 of the selectable missions, you arrive at the final mission of the game. I don't mind reiterating that it's abundantly clear why I never finished 2160 as a kid. Even now, knowing about the fast forward button, it's been a slog to get to this point, and my jubilation upon realizing that this was the final mission is hard to overstate. Tensions with the boss fully boil over when Falkner requests the ability to make a fleet.
I am obedient, but I ask for at least 1 replicatorus so that I can make a fleet.
You will get nothing more. You have lost my trust for the present. My fleet will follow your progress.
Really, quite the profound management failure to not even be able to work with an employee you are currently mind-controlling. The enemy UCS and LC forces to the north are considerable, as are your boss's forces off to the east. You may already be able to tell from this setup where this is all going. As your assault begins upon the UCS forces, Falkner is given pause by a high number of civilians.
There are mainly civilians here. No military forces of the enemy. I will continue to search for military targets.
Tyrannos is having none of it, though.
Falkner, do I make myself clear? Eliminate them all!
Araya once again prevails upon Falkner's better instincts.
Michael, this is Araya. Don't listen to that madman. These people haven't done anything. They're just ground control civilians.
Ah, ground control. Oh, how I wish I was playing that instead. Rifkin, the corrupt Eurasian dynasty commander, surprisingly shows up here to prod Falkner further.
You can't do anything. You always have been and always will be a weakling, Falkner.
Apparently, he betrayed the other human forces, to which he proffers the explanation.
Well, I'm on the winning side, and you're not.
Truly, this is poetry. Tyrannos tells him to be quiet.
Quiet! Rifkin, I ordered you to remain silent.
It's kind of funny to imagine all of these characters awkwardly in the same Discord voice channel. At long last, out of pure rage against Rifkin, Falkner is back to his old self.
I am Major Michael Falkner, and you, Vantroff, will pay for everything you've done.
In the talking head dialogue anyway, he's still very much physically a monster man. Interesting that it was not the threats against civilians that pushed him over the top, but his white-hot hatred of Colonel Rifkin. You retain control of your fleshy army and are now allied to the UCS and LC forces on the map. Araya even found a replicatorus for you to build up a fleet with. A bit too convenient, but I'm not about to question it. Especially as, once again, the map is narrow as shit, making air forces your best bet. Before you attack Van Troff, you have to get through Rifkin and his Eurasian dynasty forces. He himself is leading them there as an infantry unit. Once you eliminate him, the forces surrender to you. I appreciate this. Again, nice to not have to demolish the entire base for one man's stupidity. Once you finally start engaging Van Troff's forces, you notice that he, too, is in an infantry unit form. Surprisingly, his death goes completely uncommented on. No death rattle, not even a one-liner from Falkner. This also doesn't end the mission, as you have to eliminate the now leaderless alien forces. To me, this really highlights how landing the final shot on a big bad is a much better end than mopping up disparate enemy forces. Feels like there's a game design principle at play there. Regardless, 20 minutes of lawn mowing later, and you are treated to a wonderful exchange indicating you've hit the ending trigger.
Araya, Michael here. We've won. We've overcome the monsters.
Michael, are you aware that you've just saved humanity from total annihilation?
probably don't want to invoke total annihilation there, Earth 2160, lest some rather unfavorable comparisons be drawn. Finally, triumphant music starts to play. We join Araya and Falkner on the bridge of the Phoenix for the curtain call, looking for all the world like the leads of a high school production of The Shape of Water. The dialogue is not even close to synced with the talking animations.
You know, I'm glad we've managed to defeat Van Troff and save humanity, but I feel as if I've begun something without finishing it.
Oh hey, one of the developers accidentally put their production notes into the game's script. Araya questions the origins of the aliens.
Where did these beings come from in the first place? Who created them?
I suppose you mean Van Troff.
No, not him. He was just the one who brought them back to life. He didn't really know what he was doing.
Didn't know what he was doing? While perhaps true in the abstract, didn't know what he was doing is a pretty funny way to put that. As if on cue, Eden's Gate starts powering up, revealing a sequel hook where you probably fight whatever this thing is. The final words being,
"Look, the portal is fully open. What is it?"
What is it? Thank you so very much for that, Earth 2160. Thank you ever so much. I could not have asked for a better bookend of befuddlement. You are then unceremoniously dumped to the main menu to be serenaded by the game's main theme. And that, my friends, is Earth 2160. Good lord. So, what the hell happened here? Starting with the obvious, the difference between Earth 2150 and Earth 2160 is enormous. The safer option would have been to just iterate on 2150's core systems, not to layer on all these additional features like hero inventories. But if nothing else, they really went for it. The it in question here probably being 2002's Warcraft 3. Now, admittedly, I haven't played Warcraft 3, which I realize is a hell of an admission for an RTS content creator, but somehow it's just always been a blind spot for me. Regardless, I know enough of the gist of Warcraft 3 to put together that this focus on heroes may have been more than a little inspired by it. It's also worth pointing out that the team that made 2160 was quite different from the team that made 2150. While the games have the same lead designer, only a handful of the team, mostly those working on the graphics and sound, worked on both. Beyond that, the 2160 team is twice as large and contains a lot more producers. Of course, something else that likely had a massive impact was that 2160 had a different publisher, Midway Games, which went bankrupt in 2010, 5 years after 2160's release. Earth 2150, by contrast, was published by Mattel Interactive. Yeah, the Barbie company, which no longer exists either, admittedly. I can't help but wonder if they took a different publishing approach than Midway did with 2160. The box itself makes me question how much Midway knew what they were doing. Not the front cover, that actually goes kind of hard, but inside the flap where it proudly says, "Battle against 3 other unique factions for supremacy, or form strategic alliances as you embark on adventurous missions to establish yours as the dominant race of the future, be that human, android, or alien." Okay, so you may have noticed one or more things wrong there, but just to be clear, let's go through them real quick. Number 1, you definitely never had the choice in any of the campaigns to form alliances or not with anyone, unlike 2150, which actually did kind of implement that feature a little. Number 2, they probably should have used the word faction here instead of race, as 3 of the 4 are decidedly human. In terms of androids, you encounter one android character in the entire game, a hireable hero. The UCS civilians are decidedly human, from the sound of it, unless that was characterization left on the cutting room floor. The back of the box is downright hilarious. Will humanity survive Earth 2160? Maybe this is petty, but while I get what they're going for here, this doesn't quite work grammatically. Also hilarious is a feature the back of the box tipped me off to, a first-person view that you can activate by hitting the caps lock button. Why was programming time dedicated to this? Who would use this? Yeah, I know, literal back-of-the-box feature, but I don't think that one's exactly a winner. A surprising inclusion in the Steam Digital Deluxe version of 2160 is an honest-to-God making-of video. Here we can see the game's lead developer wearing the traditional tracksuit in front of what I think are some MiG-21s. The video goes into a little bit of the history of the series, as well as showing off some rather impressive concept art. The video also confirms the intention of moving the Earth series towards a more story-focused experience.
The most important thing for us was to create interesting and believable characters and antagonists.
They also allude to a system that definitely doesn't exist in the game.
So we concentrated on missions and gave them quests and sub-quests.
That would actually be kind of cool if there were sub-quests. Shame that got left on the cutting room floor, but I get it. They also interview the game's lead artist. For all the game's foibles, the unit model work and art direction are still, to this day, genuinely pretty good. Definitely impressive for the time. So, given everything I've shown you in this video, how do you think the game did commercially? I think the multiple declining price stickers on the boxed copy I bought while I was on my honeymoon tells the tale pretty well. Shout out to the Vermont Gaming Academy in Burlington, by the way, your selection was impeccable. An article in Der Spiegel, all caps, written a few months after the game's release states that the game sold 100,000 copies, while being pirated 600,000 times. Admittedly, I may have contributed to that second number back when I was a teenager, so I do feel a little guilty at this. Though I think their strategy of mass filing claims against pirates may have been a little far. The game's copy protection is currently essentially impossible to authenticate on Windows 11 without a fan patch, an annoying legacy of a pirate-obsessed era. The Der Spiegel article also provides the cost to develop the game, 5 million euros. Or, in Eagles per hamburgers, $6.2 million. Adjust for inflation and you get about $10 million in 2025 dollars. This seems like an absolute bargain in modern game development terms, and it really speaks to an era where these mid-sized game projects had a lot more prominence in the marketplace. Anyhow, as the Earth series has been dead since 2160's release, I don't think a continuation seems particularly likely. If I were the holder of the IP, rather than continuing the story in a theoretical Earth 2170, I would go all in on an Earth 2150 remake. You can't tell me there wouldn't be demand for that. Or even a prequel set a few years before Earth 2140. It seems like there's a lot to work with there, lore-wise. Honestly, I'm kinda surprised none of the many independent teams attempting to reimagine classic RTS games have tried to recapture what worked in the Earth series. Maybe someday. Maybe. So yeah, like I said earlier, that's Earth 2160. I came into this project absolutely ready to hate it, and don't get me wrong, parts of it I very much did. But now I mostly just feel a kind of sadness. There's a lot here that works. Or, okay, well maybe that's a bit too far, let me rephrase. There's a lot here that comes painfully close to working. From the fascinatingly asymmetric factions to even the pulpy sci-fi characters and in-engine cutscenes, I see an underdog here. I stopped short of calling Earth 2150 Eurojank in the previous video because of its polish and execution, but this is the platonic ideal of Eurojank. Reaching for greatness and just barely missing it. Do I recommend it to you watching this? No, probably not, but I think you'll still agree its existence makes the world we live in a more beautiful place. Thank you for joining me.